studying the book of Mark, and in Mark, we are up to the point where Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem. And he's on his way to Jerusalem because Easter's coming, right? It's about to be the crucifixion and the resurrection of Jesus. And so he's traveling from Galilee about 85 miles. You know, he doesn't have a car, right? So this is a trip. It's a hike. Him and his disciples, and they're traveling about 85 miles to get to Jerusalem. And as they're on their way, you might recall that they stopped in a place called Capernaum. And Jesus, when he was there, he had a little chat with some people who were asking him about marriage, or asking him about divorce in particular. He didn't want to talk about divorce. He said, let me talk to you about marriage. Because marriage is the standard. I want to talk about the real thing that God created. So he talks about that for them. And then he welcomes some kids and says, you need to come like children. You know, you need to come like these little children come. He scoots down the road a little bit and he encounters a guy that's a rich guy and he's got a question. His question is this. He says, what do I have to do to inherit eternal life? Good question. Maybe a lot of you have asked that question too. Jesus basically has to humble this guy and let him realize that he's not perfect. He hasn't kept all the commands, and that the only way he's going to have salvation is for him to be willing to recognize that he's a sinner. And to do that, he's got to know that he hasn't kept all the commandments. He doesn't love God more than he loves money, right? So it goes on. They travel down a little bit more, and as they're going, Jesus explains to them a third time. He's done this twice already. He explains to his disciples that he's going to be handed over, he's going to be beaten, he's going to be flogged, and he's going to be crucified. So he's given them a heads up as to what's happening, because God knows, Jesus knows what's about to go down. And so as they keep going down the road after just hearing this, James and John, two of his disciples, they want a little private time with Jesus. Say, hey, pull back. And he's talking, and they're like, listen, when we get there, we want you to do us a solid. We want you to do something for us. Just tell us you'll do it before we ask you the question. And he's like, well, his question is this: what do you want me to do for you? That's an important question, because it's going to be the question that we face today too. He's going to ask that exact same question word for word of the guy that we see today. What do you want? And what they want is position. They want power. They want, hey, let one of us sit at your right hand, one of us sit at your left hand. You know, we want to have those kinds of positions. And Jesus turns that and he gets his disciples and goes, listen, man, the one who is great in the kingdom is the one who's the servant of everybody, right? Don't be like the Gentiles that rule it over you, and that's how they rule from the top down. You want to be good in the kingdom, you got to be like me. Jesus says, you need to be like me. I'm one who serves. I have come to serve. And so if you want to be powerful in the kingdom of God, be like the king. And if Jesus is the king, be like him. Right? So now they're traveling down and they're getting closer. They just keep getting closer to Jerusalem, and they're heading now into a town called Jericho. Now Jericho is an old town. You ever hear of Jericho? You ever hear that one? Jericho, there's a song about it. You know the song, the walls come tumbling down, right? And they march around it. It's one of the oldest cities in the entire world, Jericho. It's been around like forever. And it's a trip from Jericho to get to Jerusalem is about 17 miles southwest. Yeah, so you can kind of see this if you go up there. You see Capernaum. They went down kind of along the river valley there. And now they're coming into Jericho. And all that's left is this. But what do you see in the between Jericho and Jerusalem? You see a whole lot of rocky, messed up kind of jagged with caves, and it's kind of scary in there. And you're like, I don't want to go in there. And for good reason, because this section right in here is what's known in the Bible as the valley of the shadow of death. So you ever read Psalm 23? Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Why fear no evil? I'm not going to fear evil, even though there's bandits and outlaws that are going to come in and beat me up and rob me. There's an actual story in the Bible called the story of the Good Samaritan that's specifically about this place where they're traveling right now. And it's about 17 miles to get there. You're like, well, 17 miles isn't pretty, they're pretty good shape. They've been doing a lot of walking. It's not going to be too hard. You don't understand. Jericho is 825 feet below sea level. Okay? Over 17 miles, Jerusalem is 2,500 above. Right? So for those of us that went to public school, that's a good 3,200 feet rise in only 17 miles. And you're going up and you're afraid that some crazy guy's going to come out and rob you and maybe kill you and take your lunch money. You're thinking, wow, I don't know about that. So he's about to go from there to Jerusalem, and he's going to do his last miracle. Right here today, he does his last miracle. Now, it's his last miracle if you don't consider him cursing out and killing a fig tree. If you consider that a miracle, then you're like, all right, well, he had another one. But otherwise, this is the last one that's like a real miracle, like he heals somebody or does something. So let's take a look at this. It says in verse 46, it says, "Then they came to Jericho, and later, as he was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a crowd, a beggar who was blind named Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the road." Okay, so we meet this guy. His name is Bartimaeus. Okay, how many of you, any of you Irish? Anybody Irish? You got some Irish? Any of you got anybody like Norwegian or Dutch? So some guys, like I was in the Reformed church, and when I was in the Reformed church, everybody's name began with Van. So it was Van Ostrad or Van Antwerp. And whenever you see Van in front of it, that means they came from Antwerp, right? Van Antwerp. When you see like McDonald's, right? You go to McDonald's, right? That means son of Donald's, right? Son of Donald's. Whenever you see Bar in the Bible, it means son of so-and-so. So Bar-Abbas is the son of Abbas, right? And Bartimaeus is the son of Timaeus. And it says right here, you can tell, it says son of Timaeus was sitting by the road. And so he's sitting along the road. That's kind of important. You're like, why is he sitting by the road? He's sitting by the road because he's blind. You go, well, hey, you don't, just because you're blind, that don't mean you got to be sitting by the road. We're going to find out he is specifically, look what it says. It says, as he was leaving Jericho with his disciples and the crowd, a beggar who was blind named Bartimaeus. So he's by the gate. It's where you go in and out. And what do beggars do? Beggars don't have jobs. They're at the gate begging for money all the time. As people go in and out of the gate, it's the one place people got to go if you're going to go in and out. And so you just sit there and you wait and you ask for money. And this is his job. It's not like he just happened to be there one day. He's there every day. This is his regular routine. Okay? So he's there and he's waiting. Begging, you go to Moline, you go to the Quad Cities, and you see guys, they got a sign kind of like right in front of Home Depot, and they're standing there, and they got a sign that says, anything helps. You ever see that? And they're begging. You know, in the Old Testament, there wasn't anything set up for begging. Do you know that? There's no rule in the Bible or in the law about this is what you should do when you see a beggar. The reason why is because in the Old Testament law had already accounted for how people that were old or people who couldn't take care of themselves or people who were invalids would be taken care of. It would be their family, right? The family was supposed to so that wasn't even included in the Bible. So this is something that's come up out of nowhere. People are just begging because their families aren't doing what they're supposed to do in the Old Testament time. All right? So it goes on, and it says, and when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, so he's heard some rumors. He's been listening to the grapevine, and he knows that Jesus of Nazareth does some great things. When he hears it's Jesus of Nazareth, they're saying, oh, here comes Jesus of Nazareth. When they hear that, it says he began to cry out and say, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Now watch what the people in there were saying. The people called him Jesus of Nazareth. In other words, this guy who came from Nazareth, right? They're calling him very earthly. This guy hears about him, and when he cries out, who does he cry out for? He cries out for Son of David. Son of David is the name that Jesus, one of the names that he adopts from. It's a messianic name. He's from the Davidic line, which means he's the Messiah. And this beggar knows that. He knows from the Psalms, and he knows from Scripture, from Isaiah, that the Messiah is going to be able to heal the blind. And so he's kind of jazzed up about that, and he starts crying out, right? There's all kinds of crowd there, and he's by the road, and he's walking by, and as he's walking by, nobody knows, really notices this guy, and we don't want him to be bothered, this important teacher. We don't want to be bothered by this beggar, on the side of the street. And so it says he cried out. He cried out. I don't know if you ever cried out to Jesus. Have you ever been in a state where you're like, I need you to hear me, Jesus? And maybe you're there now. You're like, boy, I don't know. Jesus, I need you to hear me. Right? I'm not going to say, oh, Jesus. Oh, Jesus. No, it's a cry. You know what this cry is? I'll tell you what this cry is. This word for cry out, is not just a word for speaking loudly. It's the word that's used in the Bible for a woman exclaiming during childbirth. Okay? We see this passage used in verses in the Bible regarding someone. It's a scream. He is yelling out at the top of his lungs, Jesus, have mercy on me. Have mercy. The crowd's going nuts. Sorry about that, a little Cecilia. She's like, wait a second, this guy, I don't like him anymore. He's crying out, yelling. And he doesn't cry out, hey, dude from Nazareth. He cries out, Son of David. Son of David. And there's just one thing between this guy that's yelling out, Son of David, have mercy on me, and him getting healed. Only one thing. You know what keeps this guy, is going to keep this guy from being healed? Disciples. You know that? You know that's pretty normal. What keeps people from experiencing God a lot of times is the church. It's a lot of times God's people. You know, Brendan Manning, you ever hear of Brendan Manning? He was a priest, great. He was a Catholic priest, but really loved Jesus. And he said the single greatest cause of atheism in this world is Christians who acknowledge Jesus with their lips but deny him by their lifestyle. And so here you've got this guy that is begging for mercy, and they're like, hey, now, be quiet now. Just hold the phone now. The good teacher's got other stuff to do. He can't be messing with you now. And everybody's crying. And so Jesus is walking along, and this guy's crying out. And when Jesus hears the voice of a person who cries out, what does he do? Look at what he does. It says that he stopped. He stopped. He didn't say, hey, what's that? He just stopped. He began to cry out. Jesus said, Son of David, have mercy on me. Many were sternly telling him to be quiet. Be quiet. But he kept crying out all the more. Son of David, have mercy on me. I'm just going to keep yelling because I don't have any other option. That's the foundation of the gospel. Did you know that? The foundation of the gospel is I don't have a plan B. The foundation of the gospel is I'm a sinner. I am helpless to fix my problems. I'm helpless to fix my relationship with you. There's nothing I can do. And so I'm putting my faith in you. I'm going to cry out to you, and I have zero plan B. It's all on you, and I trust you. And that's what he does. He cries out, and they can't get him to be quiet. And so Jesus is going to stop, right? He's going to stop. I mean, really, Jesus doesn't need to bother with the messy problems of people. He doesn't have to bother with that. Right? And the disciples are like, we're not going to give up our spots next to Jesus. We're not going to give up our pew. We're not going to give up our place in this. This place belongs to us. Right? Jesus belongs to us. He's ours. There's no room for you. And plus, you got all kinds of issues, and we don't want you around. I don't like that. I don't like that. And so Jesus is going to let them know that following him means inviting the outsider to be an insider. So watch what happens. He's going to invite the outsider, the one that's on the side of the road, the one that's blind, the one that's crying out, the one that's causing a fuss, the one that everybody's like, man, this guy, I wish it would be good if he wasn't here. Right? Jesus stops. I love this. He says, many were sternly telling him to be quiet, but he kept crying out all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. He shouts out more emphatic. It means to scream at the top of his lungs. And this is used in Mark chapter 5, this term. It's used in Mark chapter 5 of the demons that are screaming. And in Revelation chapter 12, when you've got the woman that's screaming in childbirth, this is the word that's used. This word is used for the woman screaming out in childbirth. So when John and James, they'd made their request, they did it discreetly, didn't they? Remember last week? They came quietly. They didn't want the other disciples to know they're asking this question. They didn't want them to know, right? You're going to do it privately. Oh, my Christianity is privately. My relationship is private. I don't want anybody to know. I don't want anybody to know the nature of that kind of thing. Not this guy. This guy's like, I'm a mess and I need you. He just screaming out, I'm a mess, I got problems I can't see, and have mercy on me. He doesn't even say what he wants. He just says, have mercy on me. He doesn't even say, come heal my blindness. He just says, have mercy on me. He just stops at that. And it says in verse 49, it says, and Jesus stopped and said, call him here. Call him here. Just stops right where he's at. Everything else can wait. I know we're on our way out. I know I'm going to Jerusalem, but there's room for one more. There's room for one more. And so he stops walking, and he makes room for one who's seeking mercy. It says, so they called the man who was blind, saying to him, take courage and stand up. He is calling for you. So now all the people's like, now be quiet. We don't want you around here. Now you settle down. Now don't you be quiet. The good teacher's got more important things to do. The people that were all saying that is, good. Oh, he wants you. Yes, we want you in there. A real fickle crowd, right? They're like all of a sudden change their minds, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, the good teacher wants you. Oh yeah, you should be a part of this group because the teacher wants you, right? He's all excited for them. And God's going to do something. Take courage. Stand up. He's calling for you. This is the same fickle crowd that just in about a week, less than a week, he's going to go into Jerusalem and they're going to be saying, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. He's our Messiah. We're excited. They're waving palm branches. And then just a week later, they're going to say, crucify him. Kill this guy. Fickle crowd. Right? They're a fickle crowd. But Jesus calls the man to himself. When we cry out to Jesus, he calls us to himself. And it says, and throwing off his cloak, he jumped up and came to Jesus. You realize that's probably the only thing he owns, right? It's not like he's got like a bunch of other stuff in the back. He's begging. He doesn't have any food. He don't got no house. He don't have nothing. He's begging, right? The only thing he's got is this cloak. And he's like, man, I don't need that anymore because I'm going to Jesus. Anything that's going to keep me from, I don't need to sit here and just hold on to my cloak, right? Because what Jesus has is far better than I have. I'm going to need it. I'm going to be able to see. God's going to do something for me. And so he gets rid of it. This cloak, like I said, is probably all that he owns. But it reminds us of the rich young ruler, doesn't it? We saw the rich guy, right? And Jesus said, sell all that you have. Then come follow me. And what does that guy do? He said he goes away sad, right? Because he's got lots of possessions. He's rich, and he can't leave everything behind. It's harder for a rich man to do that than a blind beggar. The blind beggar says, hey, all I got's this cloak, and so here you go. I'm off. Let's get something done. So it says, in replying to him, Jesus said just the exact same words that he asked James and John, when they said, we want you to do this for us. We want you to do something for us. Jesus says, what is it that you want me to do for you? Watch what it says here. It says, and the man who was blind said, and replying to him, Jesus said, what do you want me to do for you? And what did the disciples, James and John, ask for? They wanted position. They wanted positions. They wanted to be in power. That was the desire of their heart. What's this guy say? What's this guy got to say? And the man who was blind said to him, Rabboni, which is rabbi, I want to regain my sight. I want to regain my sight. I want position. I just want to be able to see. I'm not asking for the moon. I just want to be able to see. But I'm asking for something that only you can give me. Right? James and John are asking for something that they think that they can earn. Something that they think that they deserve because they're related to Jesus and because they followed him and they got picked to go up on the mountain. They think somehow they've earned this position. And this guy's not saying, I didn't earn nothing. I'm just blind and just have mercy on me. I want whatever you'll give me and I'll take it. And what I really like is I just like to see. And it's cool, it says, some versions say, I want to see, or I want sight. But the new, which version did I use? The New American Standard Version? It says, I want to regain my sight. The word in there that's used in the Greek is one that says that he hasn't always been blind. He knows what he's missing. Right? He knows what he's missing. He knows what it's like to see, and something's happened to him, whether it's an infection, whether it was just God causing him to go blind so that this miracle would happen and God would do something fantastic. But do you know what you're missing? Do you know what you're missing? Like when you're not following God, you've been following God and things are great, and you say, yeah, I love following God and things are good. And then you go your own way and you say, well, and now things take a new turn and you get yourself in a few scrapes and a few problems, and now your life's not the way you thought it would be. Do you know what you're missing? Do you know that God has something a lot better for you? And this guy remembers what it was like to see, and he's like, I want that again. And some of you, maybe you're here and you're like, I want that again. I had that before and I want it again. I want that closeness to you. I want to see you like I saw you before. I was 14 and I saw you clearly, God, when you came to me and I surrendered my life, and man, it was incredible. But it's like I've gone blind and I don't see you the way I saw you before. So God, I want to see you now, please, God. Do you know what you've been missing? Have you lost your vision? Have your ideas about what belongs here and who doesn't belong here, has that blinded you to the Bartimaeuses that are around? Has it blinded you to that? And so it says, and Jesus said, go, your faith has made you well. This one, he says, it's your faith has made you well. That's what's made you well. And immediately he regained his sight and began following him on the road. Now, look what Jesus says to him. Verse 52, he said, and Jesus said to him, go. Now, what does Jesus usually say to folk when he heals them? Or when he calls somebody? What does he say? Follow me, right? I think this is interesting. He doesn't say follow me. He says go, right? It's past the time of following me in the way, right? I'm about to go be crucified. It's not going to be follow. I need you to go. I need you to go. But you know, before you can go, you have to follow. You have to follow and go. And so this is really interesting to me. Watch what it says. And Jesus said to him, go, your faith has made you well. And immediately he regained his sight and began to follow him on the road. I ain't going nowhere. I'm sticking with him. I'm sticking with that guy. Right? He's the guy that gave me sight, and I'm sticking with him until I can't stick with him no more, and then I'm going to go. Right? He doesn't go. He just follows. And what's crazy, we know this guy's name. How many of the people in the Bible that it's a beggar or a demon-possessed guy, you're like, oh, that was Bob. Or, oh, that was Jill. You don't know any of that kind of stuff. You don't know their names. The reason you know this is because this guy becomes a disciple. They know his dad. They know his name because he becomes a part of the church. And when they write the book of Mark, they put in this story because, oh yeah, this is one of our own. We know this guy. We know he was blind, and now he's a part of our congregation. He's a part of our family, and everybody knows him. There's tradition that says he became a leader in the church, this guy. But that's important. And so it says, go, your faith has made you well. That made you well is a word in Greek it goes sozo. Sozo. It's the word for saved. He wasn't just made whole. He wasn't just made able to see. This guy gets saved. This same word sozo is used in a lot. I'll give you a couple of places where it's used in the Bible. In Matthew chapter, actually it's used 52 times outside of the Gospels, and 46 of those times are referring to eternal salvation. Okay, eternal salvation. Here's a couple of them. Matthew chapter 1, 21. And she shall bear a son, and you shall call him Jesus, for it is he who will sozo, save his people from their sins. Right? It's the same word. That's what's used about this blind guy. In Mark chapter 16, he who has believed and has been baptized shall be saved, sozo. But he who has disbelieved shall be condemned. John 10:9, Jesus declares, I am the door, and anyone who enters through me shall be sozo, saved. Okay? Acts 2:21 says, everyone who calls upon the name of the Lord shall be sozo. Right? And so Jesus tells them to go, and I want you to notice his name. Yeah, notice his name. They know him because he gets saved. He doesn't just like able to see and then it's off. It changes his life. He's transformed. He knows that this is not Jesus of Nazareth. This is the Son of David. Right? This is the Messiah. And so today, if Jesus was to ask you, we'll just close with this, and then I'm going to dismiss us. We can go downstairs, have some lunch. This question got asked of James and John, and then it gets asked of this guy. What do you want me to do for you? What do you want me to do for you? This morning, right now, where you are, what do you want him to do for you? Jesus standing right here. Says, what do you want me to do for you? Just think about all the stuff that's in your life. Think about all the things that are happening. Think about the things that James and John asked for. They wanted positions. This guy comes and he says, just have mercy on me. I want to see. That's not to say that your needs, the things in your life aren't important to God. I'm not saying that at all. But is it power? Is that what you're after? Is that what you think? You think God's going to grant that one real quick? I just want to be powerful. I want to have a lot of clout. I want comfort. I just want to be happy in myself. I don't want to suffer at all. I want to be better looking. You're like, Dustin, how could that be? I want more money. Right? I want to be more popular. What would you ask for? Would you see yourself more like Bartimaeus, who says, God, anything that I have is a gift from you. And so, God, just have mercy on me. And these are the things that I'd really like to happen. I'm not asking for power or anything like that. I just want you to have mercy on me. Or would you be more like James and John? More selfish desires. The big difference is that this guy Bartimaeus, he cries out in desperation. It says, have mercy on me. And when we cry out in desperation, when we're at our end and we cry out in desperation, we say, God, have mercy on me. And louder, have mercy on me. Louder, have mercy on me. And everybody's telling you to shut up. I don't want you around here. Have mercy on me. What happens? Jesus stops. I want you to know that if you're in need and you need mercy today and you're crying out to God, cry out. And if you're crying out, cry out louder. And if you're still crying out and you don't hear, cry out louder until Jesus stops. And he says, what do you want from me? I don't want much. I just want my family to love Jesus. I just want to be able to see. I just want my wife to love me. I just want my kids to respect me. I just want to know you better tomorrow than I know you today. I just want to be able to deal with this stress and turn this over to you. I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, I want you to pray with me now, and we'll close up with that. God, right now we are at a lot of different places. There's a lot of us here, and we all have lots of different issues and different lives. And when we think we've got it all figured out, then we start jockeying for position, and we become a James and a John, God. But we don't want to be those people. We want to be people that recognize that we don't deserve anything. We're sinners. We fall short of you. And anything that we get, God, all we want is for you to be merciful on us, to save us, and to allow us to follow you. So God, we do have needs. We have needs, and we're going to tell you those right now, God. In the quietness, say, these are the things that are concerning me. These are the things that are bothering me. These are the things that I'm not asking for some special request. I'm just saying, God, have mercy on me. I need you right now. Just cry out to God and wait for him to stop. Just say those things to God. Yes, God. And Jesus, as we make these requests, as we cry out to you in our hearts, God, we ask you to stop and to meet us and to minister us. In Jesus' name.
And I've been chased by a demon.